face it, I am a comic genius. If you know me and you're thinking to yourself, well, then why have you been hiding it for so long? I can explain. Basically, I admit that I have been hiding it. Actually, it's not so much that I'm specifically a comic genius. I'm really just a genius in general, and there are a lot of people who are geniuses, some of whom do not hide it. But just about the only way that I can communicate with people who are not geniuses so that they get a sense of my genius is through comedy. So, in other words, I say I'm a comic genius just to inform you that you have my permission to laugh at anything that I share with you. So, now let me define genius for you. Genius doesn't mean someone who knows how to work their equipment. That's not a comic genius, at least. A comic genius would be someone who's just funny. So, even when they don't mean to be. A genius, though. Genius, specifically, is genius in general. Since you probably don't know exactly what I mean by the word genius, I'll tell you. I'm just less naive than most people about certain things. That's it. In other words, when some new information is available, I can understand it faster than the average person. In some cases. I'm far above average in intelligence. Other people may understand it eventually, at least partially. That's what it means to be a genius. It's basically fast at something. Obviously, just because I'm a genius, that does not mean that I'm always right or that there are not some other people who are smarter than me about any particular subject or even in general. I'm only a genius. That's not the same as being the smartest person in the world or something. That would be pretty hard to determine, right? So, since I am a comic genius, I give you permission to be intelligent and even to be funny too, uh, because I'm not worried about you being smarter than me or funnier than me. I know that I'm smart, and I know that I can be funny, at least when I choose to be. And as I said earlier, sometimes when I don't choose to be, but if I choose to be, I can be. That's the point. In other words, because I'm a freaking comic genius, why would I worry if you were smarter about something than I am? I'm a comic genius. To a genius, when other people show their confidence, the genius just thinks, hey, there's another person that may offer some particular practical value. Great. It's not intimidating. Other people may be intimidated by intelligence, but would a genius be intimidated by intelligence? No. A genius is familiar with intelligence. A genius recognizes it quickly and appreciates intelligence. Why is a porn star not intimidated by nakedness? Well, because they've been naked a lot around strangers and they've been around other naked people a lot. So why would it be intimidating? They're familiar with it. They recognize it immediately. Oh, that's a naked person. See, I'm like that in regard to comedy and in intelligence and being a genius and stuff like that. I can quickly tell, and I'm not intimidated by it. I've been around them a lot. Like, for instance, I've been around me most of my life. So, before we go any further, I want to clear up something about this. People are just however smart they are. They don't deserve to be more or less smart. They are just more or less smart. Different people, really, they are. Sometimes, like when I was younger, I wasn't as smart. At least, back when I thought I was really smart, no, I wasn't as smart then. Ironic, huh? All right. So, in fact, that brings us to one of the first topics of, like, these are real topics now, by the way, of the discussion. The idea of guilt and vanity. I think those are two things to be cautious about. Vanity basically is thinking that you deserve the things you appreciate instead of just appreciating the things you appreciate. You don't. You don't deserve the things you appreciate. The whole idea of appreciation is the recognition that you're the recipient of grace, of unearned advantage, of undeserved privileges. Recognizing that grace is intelligent. It's called modesty. You might not have heard of the term, or maybe you've heard of it and just aren't familiar with it. This is what it means. Okay, modesty is not saying I'm not smart when you know you are smart. That's pretense. And usually to try to trick people into perceiving that you are humble. Modesty is not tricking people. Modesty is actually being humble about how great your life is. Like not being arrogant about deserving it or you know, thinking I earned this based on some karma from some past lives. That's not modesty. That's arrogance. Modesty is not ignoring how great your life is. It's acknowledging how great your life is. Uh, so modesty is not ignoring how great your life is. That would be neglect or maybe even stupidity. And then pretending that your life is not privileged when it is, that's not modesty. That's pretense again. So I already mentioned karma and past lives. Who really cares about karma and past lives? So what if any of that was true? It doesn't matter to me, but it's kind of an interesting topic. Let's assert for a moment that I deserve to have the past that I have, or that I had, whichever. I deserve to be born where and when I was. I deserve to be raised how I was. I deserve my genetic inheritance. I deserve my family of origin and my education and the diet I've had throughout my life and all of my personal history. Everything that's ever happened, I deserved it. Everything. That's the whole idea of karma or past life deserving of stuff. Okay? So imagine just for fun that I did earn it all. I earned it all. Everything. Nothing more than I got and nothing less than I got. I earned it all precisely. So although I could have earned a better past or a less favorable past, I actually earned exactly the past I have. I deserved it. Well, that idea is pure vanity. It's useless. It's not a problem, though. It's just useless. However, since I don't care about the issue, I'll be glad to pretend that I believe in all that karma stuff just so you don't get sidetracked by fine. If you think that in some past life you earned exactly what you have now, I don't care. I don't mind. Whether you believe that you earned it or not, you have exactly the past you have, right? If you like believing that you earned it and that helps you to get beyond some distracting issue and move on to facing what you actually have, fine. You have the past you have. You have exactly the privileges you have and the resources you have and the capacities you have. And if you think oh, I have the karma that I have, you want to add that in, fine. Uh, you have exactly what you have. Is that clear? Okay, good. We agree on that. That's great. And if you think you earned it, and if you think you're the most modest person in the world and you deserve a pat on the back for that, whatever, fine. Okay. If you want to grieve over the past, that's a different thing. But let's go with guilt. Guilt is a form of vanity. You might not have ever recognized this, but guilt is just the absolute most worthless kind of vanity. Guilt is focusing on how you should have earned a better present than you now have. Is futile. Get over it. Get over it. If you want to grieve over the past, that's understandable. Fine, grieve. Go ahead. If you don't appreciate something when you have it, and then later when it's gone, you finally have a sudden appreciation for it, great. That's delayed appreciation. That's grief. Better late than never, right? Great. For instance, let's imagine that my dog dies, and then I notice soon after that how much I appreciated that dog. Okay? That's good to know. Maybe next time if I get another dog, then I will appreciate the dog more when I actually have it. That's grief. That's fine. But if I think that I should have appreciated it more and I get all, down on myself that I didn't appreciate it more when I did have it, that's guilt. That's vanity. That's useless. That's worthless. If you notice it, stop. If you notice yourself doing the guilting thing, stop. So guilt is believing that you should have appreciated life more fully in the past. That's pure vanity, totally worthless. All right. So you have the past you have. You did not deserve any of it. You didn't deserve any of it. You just have whatever you have. Actually, let me put it this way. Whether or not you deserved any of it or all of it or what, that makes no difference whatsoever now. You have exactly what you have, and that's it. If you can connect a particular pattern of action with a particular pattern of results, that's great to know. That's intelligence. Guilt's not about learning the connection between, what's effective, what's been effective, or what's been ineffective. Guilt's not about any of that. Guilt's about, I deserved it. Ugh. Bull. All right, so you did not deserve any of your past. You did not sign an agreement with angels before you were born. You did not break any of the agreement or keep any of the agreement because there was no agreement. Okay, however, that metaphor may be useful. If we like the idea that there are certain capacities that are specific to each of us, that makes sense. There are certain capacities specific to each of us, right? Okay, we're not all the same in our capacities. Some of us are comic geniuses and some of us just aren't. Okay, so if we like the idea that there is an agreement for us to identify our capacities during our lives and to develop those capacities and act on them in our lives, that's fine. That just points to the fact that each of us is a little different, right? You have the capacities that you actually have, right? You have the privileges that you actually have. You could accept that you are basically stuck with whatever you have right now. Like as if you had agreed to it before you were born in the past. As if you have some kind of obligation or commitment to use what you actually have. The point is, you have what you have. Here you are. Doesn't matter. The rest doesn't matter. Agreement, past life, karma, doesn't matter. You got what you got. That's it. So, I don't care. Fine. Pretend you have a past life. Pretend you have an agreement. Pretend whatever you want. You've got what you have. Anything that gets you to face what you actually have, I say, is genius. It's genius. It's genius. Okay. So if you like to pretend that you deserve what you now have, or to imagine that you agreed to have what you have now before you were born, that's brilliant. Either way, no matter what, you have exactly what you have. Face it. Okay? You are as smart as you are, and about certain things in particular, right? Face it. Maybe you're a genius, and maybe you're not. So what? Either way, face it. If you're modest, fine. If you're arrogant, that's fine too. By the way, arrogant people are incredibly easy to intimidate, and they love to defend their most sacred shames. They think it's pride, but it's actually shame. Maybe another time I'll tell you more about that. Arrogant people get habitually terrified. But again, being terrified is fine. Everybody gets terrified, at least occasionally, right? By the way, I don't care if you were guilty in the past, or arrogant, or whatever. Yeah, I don't care if you deserve to be guilty, or if you were victimized by your own karma from past lives, or what. If you made an agreement to be, guilty and you deserve to be guilty because of the agreement, doesn't matter to me. You have however much guilt as you have. You've had however much you've had. I may think that it's all quite pretentious and vain to have all that guilt, but you probably don't care what I think, right? Who cares what I think? All right. I don't bother with it. Why should you? Even if I did think that you deserved exactly what you have, or more than you have, or less than you have, who cares? I don't. Why should you? All right. You have whatever you have. Face it. You deserve whatever you deserve. Face it. You're facing whatever you're facing. Face it. If you, like me, are a comic genius too, then just face it. If you're a genius in some other way, I assert that there are geniuses who may be very interested in what particular ways you are a genius. There may be a lot of folks who are not intimidated by your genius. They may really appreciate it. They may be kind of waiting on you to wake up to it and share it. Okay? So there may be a lot of folks who deserve you keeping the agreement that you made before you were born and sharing your genius with them. Maybe they deserve your genius. Maybe based on some past lives and some karma and the agreement they signed, you owe them your genius. Fine. Maybe they earned it and with their karma, their past life, so on. Great. Or maybe that's a bunch of complete pretense. I don't care. Or maybe you're obligated to share your genius, but you've been totally stingy. I don't care about that either. That's fine. Just face your own genius, okay? I don't care when you face it. I don't even care if you face it, oddly enough. I don't care if you can face it or you can't face it or you should face it or you won't face it. I don't care if you are a genius or not. Just face it, you are. Maybe you are not a genius about anything at all and never will be. Maybe you are totally worthless and have no capacities and no past and no karma, and you actually do not even deserve whatever you deserve. Okay? Maybe you actually do not have whatever you have. But either way, I'm a comic genius, and you may not be yet, but face it, maybe you should be a comic genius too, huh? Maybe you should have whatever you have, and maybe you should not have whatever you have, but who cares, right? What I know is that I am a comic genius. What does that mean? It means that I have recognized the value of making fun of all the rest of my life. And sometimes other people's lives too. Okay, but in a lot of other ways, maybe I'm not a genius. Besides the comic way, if you know me, you may even know some of the other ways in which I'm not a genius. Well, obviously, before I was born, I agreed to not be a genius in all of those other areas of my life so that I would have some really funny stories to use when I am a comic genius, right? To make fun of my own life. So now you get it. Now it makes sense. Up to now, with all the comedy material I've collected so far in my life, in those other areas in which I'm not a genius, well, I'm thinking that maybe I deserve to be a genius by now in some of those areas too. I held up my part of the agreement by not being a genius in all those other areas so far for so long. So face it now, it is time for the angels to give me what I deserve, what I've earned, right? Thank you. Okay. I don't know how those angels got to be angels, and I don't know what they did to deserve it. But sometimes I feel like they must be all intimidated with me just because I'm a comic genius. Or maybe they've just never been around someone naked. But I was just trying to make them feel comfortable, given that most of the art that I've seen with angels in it, well, in that art, the angels are naked, right? So I thought they'd be more relaxed if I just dressed like them, I just kind of went with their dress code. So, I mean, either they were intimidated by my comic genius, or else the angels must have been intimidated by the size of my, no, definitely, it had to be my comic